Hey everybody, it's Alex here. Today I am doing a request from my friend Boobop1987 for my top 10 favorite Liam Neeson performances. This request has actually been on my table for quite some time. I've been busy. It is interesting to note that unlike my Michael J. Fox or Abbott and Costello top 10s, Liam Neeson's career is still very alive and well, and he's still doing a lot of movies. Some of the movies on this list are actually fairly recent, and I kind of wonder, will I ever have to redo this list? Well, I don't know. Time will tell, but these are the movies I picked. I hope you like them. I do just want to say, I will admit that I had to make a few painful cuts. I actually had to make more painful cuts than I realized to get this down to a top 10. So if some of your favorites didn't make the cut, I do apologize. They were probably really close. Also, while I'm on the subject, my friend Boobop1987 has not only done a few top 10s for Liam Neeson, but other films in general. So I recommend checking out her lists, but also I recommend checking out the top 10 list by Brian of Three Topic Reviewers. He did a very good list that I recommend checking out. I've been a fan of his videos, actually ever since he did his top 10 Liam Neeson performances. So without further ado, here are my top 10 favorite Liam Neeson performances. Number 10, Rob Roy. Rob Roy is an interesting film because it's in the middle of when he was known as a dramatic actor, but before he was known as an action hero. So you kind of have a mix. He kind of plays a very romanticized hero, which I think he does very well in this movie, and his relationship in this movie with Jessica Lange, I think, is very good. He does come off as very romantic, very kind, but he's also a very serious and tough hero, which, Liam Neeson has proven time and again in his more recent work that he's definitely very adept at. And one of the things that sticks out for me is that Rob Roy is a movie that may be better known more for its villains. In fact, Tim Roth actually got an Academy Award nomination for his performance in this film as Decker Shadow. But in a way, I think having such memorable and such standout villains actually works in Liam Neeson's favor, because it's like he's surrounded by these very unique, very even bizarre villains, but during all of it, he just remains this tower of strength against all of them. Plus, this movie has some pretty good sword fight action, so if you haven't seen it, I recommend it. Number 9, Priest Vallon in Gangs of New York. And here we have why I'm calling this the top 10 performances and not movies, because Liam Neeson, unfortunately, isn't in a whole lot of this movie. He only appears in the first 15 minutes. But, man, does he own those 15 minutes? And besides, who says he can't have a memorable performance in 15 minutes? Look at Robert Duvall in Apocalypse Now, Michael Keaton in Beetlejuice, Anne Hathaway in Les Miserables. Okay, you can have a memorable performance even if you only have a little bit of screen time. Also, throw in Anthony Hopkins in The Silence of the Lambs. He only has like 15 minutes in that movie. But, in a lot of ways, there's a lot of what I said about the performance in Rob Roy in this performance, where, he's this very strong figure. And, I hate to hammer in the fact that he has such a short time in this movie, but in that short time, we still learn a lot about this character and Priest Vallon, that he's, he comes off like a very good man, but also a very strong man. And, the fight between him and Daniel Day-Lewis is seriously one of the coolest fights I have ever seen in any movie. I know I already mentioned Gangs of New York as my favorite movie of 2002, and it's on this list again. If I ever do my top 10 favorite movie fight scenes, this movie's gonna come up again. So, even if it's not one of his longest lasting performances, Liam Neeson made the most out of his short time in this movie. Number 8, Non-Stop. Before I get into my full review for this movie and Liam Neeson's performance, I should explain a little about why I may have some personal bias in favor of this movie. You see, I saw this movie at what was the culmination of a very rough week for me, and you know, there was some debate in my head. It's like, should I go to the movies? Shouldn't I go to the movies? It's like, you know what? I had a bad week. I am treating myself. So I saw Non-Stop, and you know what? It was a very good reward for a rough week. This movie, it was advertised a lot as a more action-y style movie, when it's really more of a mystery suspense thriller. And as a suspense film, I think it works a lot. And a lot of the movie is placed on Liam Neeson's performance. There are actually a lot of quiet moments in this movie. That's one of the things I really like about this movie, and this is one of the reasons this movie made the list. It's a very quiet performance where we have to study Liam Neeson's face, and you know, there's a lot of negative space in the action and the dialogue where we have to, where, you know, he uses that to his advantage to let us try and figure out what he's thinking and what his next step is. And I think that works out so well, and I think that's one of the reasons that Liam Neeson is still such a popular action star these days, that he can, you know, he's really someone who's you watch him and, you know, this is someone who's really thinking about every action he takes, and is taking every step he needs to, and doing the smart thing that he needs to. If I had one criticism of Non-Stop, I feel that the payoff of who did it, I kind of feel like the writers may have written themselves into a corner where they had such good build-up, and this movie does have some amazing build-up and suspense, that I don't know if that I'm not even sure any payoff could have lived up to that. But at the same time, that's kind of a nitpick, because by the time that big reveal comes in, that's kind of when the big action set piece of the movie comes in, and I don't think I'm giving too much away because it's on all the posters, but you almost forget about that sort of thing, because the climatic action scene in this movie is just so good. Number 7, The Lego Movie. Yeah, this is another one that's probably not too big of a surprise, since I already mentioned it as my favorite movie of 2014. This is another movie that, less than coincidentally, I saw in theaters. And what's interesting about this one is this is the only movie on this list where Liam Neeson plays dual roles, as he plays both good cop and bad cop. And for me, I think what works about it is the fact that even though this movie takes place in this goofy, cartoonish world, Liam Neeson plays it completely straight. He and Morgan Freeman, though, love Morgan Freeman, but this isn't his list. But I do kind of wish that they had given Liam Neeson a little more room to run as good cop, because I can't speak for everybody, but I think the idea of macho Liam Neeson playing this kind of timid character, just imagining him in the studio doing that gentle sounding good cop voice. I can't speak for anybody else, but that alone makes me laugh. Number 6, Les Miserables. Believe it or not, this film version of Les Miserables was actually my first ever exposure to Les Miserables. One of my history teachers showed it to my class when I was in high school, And I think it's a very good introduction. I've never seen the Broadway show, though I would love to. I've never read the book. Again, I would love to, but it's the size of a dictionary. And I have seen the 2012 Hugh Jackman movie, which I also thought was really good. But with Liam Neeson's performance, this is another performance where, he's playing a very good, very strong character, but also plays a very romantic character. And I really like his relationship with Uma Thurman's Fantine in this movie. I think it's the best part of the movie. They've got such great chemistry, and, she's helping him learn to read. He's trying to support her family. So, if you haven't seen this version, I do recommend it. I really like the way he goes toe to toe with Jeffrey Rush's Javert. I think they've got a real spark of a feud going on in this film. I do have to address one criticism I have with this adaptation. The first half of this movie is really well paced, and the second half of this movie kind of gets into some pacing issues. I just talked about the fact that it's a very long book, and I'm guessing that's why. But even with that split, I still think this is a very good movie, and I highly recommend it. Number 5, Darkman. I don't think it's too surprising that this one made the list, since I've already talked about it a few times on Movie Questions Answered. And I think it's kind of a shame that Darkman doesn't get talked about as much as it used to, because when this movie came out, it was kind of a big deal. I mean, it made a lot of money at the box office, there were direct-to-video sequels, there were comic books, video games, action figures. It helped launch Liam Neeson's career, it helped launch Frances McDormand's career. I know he directed the Evil Dead movies, which I'm also a fan of, but, it helped get Sam Raimi a lot more serious work as a director. It got him, he was now seen as someone who could direct blockbusters. And I think this is a great action movie. I think it has a great premise with, Liam Neeson playing someone who can put on synthetic skin and look like anyone he wants to, it's his performance is so good. He's playing someone who's his life has just been ruined, and he still wants to be a good man, but he's torn up with all the pain and the anguish of all the things that have happened to him, and the fact that his life was just essentially ruined. So he's a superhero and a good guy, but he's still, he's not just trying to battle the bad guys, he's trying to battle his own inner demons. And I think that's a great performance and a great angle. If you haven't seen it, I really recommend checking Darkman out. It is a great action movie. Number 4, Schindler's List. Yeah, I think it may have been a foregone conclusion that this one was going to be on the list. And, I think it's easy to just include it there. But, I think I need to talk about why it made the list. Yeah, I realize that's what I'm doing with every movie, but I digress. I actually rewatched this movie recently, mainly for research for this countdown, and a lot of what makes Liam Neeson's performance great in this movie is that it's not just one note. He starts out as this businessman who's kind of selfish. He's just trying to make a quick buck, and Liam Neeson does add some interesting layers to the character. He plays Oscar Schindler a little suave, and watching him transform into the man who saves thousands of lives is a great transformation. And I like the fact that it's not just an immediate transformation. He actually does go through some moments where he finds himself asking, what more do I need to do? And I think that's a very interesting character development. Now, I should probably also address why it's kind of low on the list. There are a lot of factors that went into how I ranked the movies, and one of them is it's like, how much do I actually like to watch the movie? And Schindler's List is a great movie, but it's not one that I find myself watching a lot. It's not one of those movies that you invite the guys over and watch. In fact, I've gotten some kind of weird reactions from telling people I was watching it. But another time, I mentioned I was watching Schindler's List, and one of my coworkers asked me, "What's Schindler's List? Is that a porno?" My response, even putting that sort of thing aside, I still think Schindler's List is a wonderful movie. This is the only movie that Liam Neeson has gotten an Oscar nomination for so far. And while I think he's given other performances that have definitely deserved Oscar nominations, don't worry, I'll get to them. I'm still glad he at least got a nomination for this movie, because I can think of so many great actors that have never even gotten a single nomination. So I am glad that Liam Neeson at least has the one Oscar nomination under his belt. Number 3, The Grey. Well, I said I was going to get to the other movies that I felt Liam Neeson deserved an Oscar nomination for, and this is one of them. This is another movie where Liam Neeson gives a very quiet, subdued performance. There are a lot of scenes where he doesn't have dialogue. There are a lot of scenes where he's alone. So again, we just have to read his face and his expressions and figure out what he's thinking. And I think he just does such a great job of communicating how he feels without dialogue. And this is a very visceral and intense movie. There are some great suspenseful moments. I'm sorry to say that it's hard to give a blow-by-blow recap of the things that happened in this movie, because talking about the best scenes in this movie would be giving some serious spoilers. And while we're on that subject, I have to address what I consider the only critical flaw of this film. If you haven't seen The Grey, I'm not going to spoil it. If you have seen The Grey, I think you already know what I'm talking about. I can appreciate what the director was going for, but I really would have liked to have seen where that was going. Still a really good movie though, and I highly recommend it. Number 2, the Taken series. I think this is the other one that was kind of a foregone conclusion that it was going to be on my list. Because Taken is the movie that basically reinvented Liam Neeson as an action star. It's kind of funny to think that he made that transition, because he was still doing a pretty good job as a dramatic actor around the time he made the first Taken. He was doing movies like Batman Begins, Kinsey, movies that just barely missed being on my list, but it's easy to see why he's so good at being an action star, because I think that being a dramatic actor helped him he was able to transition those skills into being an action star. Because there are a lot of scenes where he has to be, he's interacting with people, or scenes where he's figuring something out, and the way he handles himself and the way he reacts. I don't know if there are a lot of actors besides Liam Neeson that would be able to handle themselves in those scenes as well as he does. And Taken has become one of my favorite action movies. Much like The Grey, it's kind of hard for me to talk about the best scenes in the movie without giving away some major spoilers. Though it has given us a lot of iconic moments and a lot of iconic quotes, like I think we all know that phone call. Listen, if you're looking for money, I don't have any. But what I do have is a certain set of skills that make me a nightmare for people like you. If you don't give me my daughter back, I will find you, and I will kill you. That line was on the posters, and I think they just knew that was going to be an awesome line and a great quote for years to come. I realize they haven't exactly been critical darlings, but I did like the sequels a lot as well. I like, they still had some really good action scenes and some really, and even some moments of creativity in them that I thought were really exciting. And for me, a lot of why I like the character of Brian Mills, I like the way he figures things out. I really like watching him put the pieces of these mysteries together, because the Taken films aren't just action films, they are also mysteries. And I like his interactions with his family members. I like his relationship with Lenny. I kind of wish they had gone a different direction that could have kept her alive for the third film, though I did still like that movie. But overall I think the Taken series has been a great series of action films, and the first one is still one of my favorite action movies. Number 1, Michael Collins. Remember how I said I'd get to the other movies I think Liam Neeson deserves an Oscar nomination for? This is the other one. What can I say about this performance? Sadly, it's not one of his more talked about movies, even though I think it's one of his best performances and one of his best movies. What I really like about this character is just how many faces of this man's personality we see. I mean, he is a very strong man with very strong convictions, and in the scenes where he has to rally these people up, it's like, I believe this is the kind of man that could just talk someone into walking through a brick wall. And I don't mean he could convince them to try and do it. I mean he could actually talk them into walking through a brick wall. But at the same time, this is another movie where he's got a very romantic side in his relationship with Julia Roberts. And we also see his we actually see his convictions are challenged. He sees some of the consequences of his actions and some of the things that he has to go through and the challenges he faces in fighting for his cause. But at the same time, even amongst all this, amongst the very serious and dire need of what he's going through, we still see that he's also a very jokey person at times, like when he's at the restaurant and Julia Roberts asks who wants to dance, and he's like, "Ooh, me," or when he has to sing the Irish ditty at a friend's party. So I really love that because it's such a layered and nuanced performance that you feel like this is a real person. And I have to say that watching this movie actually inspired me to learn a lot about the real Michael Collins, and watching this has actually become a St. Patrick's Day tradition for me. And I don't know when I'm ever going to get the chance to talk about this, so I'm going to bring it up here, but I absolutely love this film's score. It is seriously one of my favorite film scores of all time. It is up there with like Batman or Back to the Future in terms of a film score that I could just listen to all day. I feel that this movie got seriously snubbed at the Oscars, but if there's one thing they got right, they at least knew to nominate this film for Best Original Score. I wish it had won, but at least it got some recognition. And if I had to single out one piece that I recommend listening to, I really recommend listening to the funeral coda at the end of the movie. You can find it on YouTube. It's like, wow, this is like the music for the funeral for the most important person ever. That's how epic this funeral score sounds. So if you haven't heard it, this video is almost over. Check it out. I highly recommend it. It's that good. So those were my top 10 favorite Liam Neeson movies. Again, I apologize if anyone's favorites didn't make the list, but hey, if I didn't mention it, it's your turn to talk about them. So feel free to share any comments on your favorites that didn't make my list. If they didn't make my list, they probably came very close, but I hope to hear from all of you, and I hope you enjoyed the video.